Hey guys, it's Craig here, Casual DM. I'm actually going to be doing a review today on Iron Heroes. I bought this, I got this on PDF a while back and I really liked it. And my buddy Michael, which I'll put his channel in the description, he went ahead and ordered me a copy from Amazon. I did not know that he was going to order it for me. It was kind of a surprise, and I was very thankful to get that. So I've been reading over it for a few weeks now, and I wanted to go ahead and do a review. I planned on playing it before I did a review, but I haven't had a chance to do so anytime soon, and I won't be able to. So this is just my impression on the game from reading through. Now, it's a lot like the D20 system, like 3.5. It's actually built off of 3.5 Dungeons and Dragons. But I will say that this book even says it, that it is not an RPG you'd want to play if you're just starting off. This is more along the lines like if you've already played Dungeons and Dragons or another D20 system and you have a general idea of how the game works, then you could probably pick up this book and start flipping through it and get a good idea of what's going on. Now, one of the first things is that this is a low magic game. It does not have an actual setting, or at least not that I know of, but the book implies a low magic setting, This doesn't mean there isn't magic, it just means that it isn't common. You're not going to be able to purchase magic items. It's not likely to see or maybe even hear about a wizard as a actual thing. You might hear about it like in stories or in tales or old wives' tales or something. But other than that, it's not likely for you to personally know someone who studies magic. Now, as far as the actual game mechanics go, one of the first things is during character creation, you don't actually pick a race. It doesn't actually say in the book, but I believe this setting implies that it's just humans, but I don't think you have to play just humans. I think you could probably easily house rule some races in. But traits replace the normal race choice that you have. So instead of picking an elf and getting traits of like a +2 to a certain ability, now you pick a trait that goes along with your character's background or just what you want out of your character. And that might give you a bonus to intellect or a bonus to strength. And it gives other bonuses as well. But the more basic bonuses are like a +2 to an ability score. Now, the classes in this game are less like D&D. D&D kind of... the classes imply a certain type of background, or at least with some of them, or a certain type of lifestyle, but these don't. These are more along the lines like a fighting style, opposed to how you act. So, opposed to being like a rogue in D&D. Well, no, that's not a good example, but like maybe a druid in D&D, because druids, they actually practiced natural magic, or a cleric who might have been raised in the temple or the church or whatever. In this, you just pick an actual fighting style, like here's a couple of the classes. Archer, which is essentially you just use ranged weapons. And Armiger, which is actually really cool in my opinion, they use their armor. They focus on their armor. Basically, their fighting style is retaliation. They get in close with someone, and they retaliate. Like, they play defensively. Then there's a berserker who just runs head forth into battle. That would be like your replacement for a barbarian, but you don't necessarily have to be an actual barbarian to be a berserker. You don't have to be barbaric. You just have to be some berserk. And then there's hunter and harrier and thief. And the thief in this, actually, I believe, focuses a little more on their skills than combat. But I'll touch on that a little bit later. Now, there is one magic using class, and that's called the Arcanist. I have not read up a lot about the magic in this game, but I have a general idea of how it works, so that if my players did pick one, I could easily just pick up the handbook and read a couple core mechanics and just be able to deal with them using a spellcaster. But I'll actually touch on magic last. Big changes to classes would be that along with a base attack bonus, you also get a base defense bonus. And the reason for this, and that would increase like a base attack bonus, except it goes to your defense. It's like armor class. I don't think they call it armor class in this game, because armor actually reduces damage now. It's not like a flat reduction though. Every armor has a different dice, or die I should say. It's a single die that you roll, and whatever you get on your roll, you take that away from the damage you were supposed to take. Now, I believe like padded armor, like padded cloth or whatever, would be the only one that doesn't actually use a dice, because it's just one. You can't go above one. But leather would be like a D2, and then it would go up to D3, D4. So, you know. Another really cool aspect of this game, at least in my opinion, some people have said it's not that big of a deal, but I personally think it's really cool. There's a thing called a token pool. And what this is depending on what class you are playing and the way you fight, you develop tokens to use for special abilities in different ways. Now, an archer would have to get like a good eye on his opponent and focus in on his opponent, and he gets tokens from, maybe skipping a move action, or skipping a standard action, or skipping the whole round, and that'll give you more tokens than just one action. And I believe they also get bonuses if their opponent doesn't move between 2 turns. They get a bonus token because it's easier to keep track of an opponent who's not moving. Now, they can use those token pools to maybe increase their to hit chance, because, for fluff reasons, they've got a good eye on the target. They've been studying him for a while, and it doesn't seem like the target's moving. So they go ahead and they feel good about their shot, so they draw back and they shoot, and it's going to be more, sure. But that doesn't necessarily mean you'll automatically hit. So that's essentially how the token pool works. I thought it was pretty interesting. I can't wait to see how that works in game. And then another thing that classes get are feat masteries. Now, mastery feats are kind of like a tree of feats. It's like you get one feat, and it increases, almost like a class ability in D&D would, or Pathfinder. So you might take a feat that gives you I can't think of an example right now, but you might get one that increases your defense by 1. And then the next time you take that feat, it puts it up to 2. And then the next time you take that feat, it gives you a random ability bonus to your chances to be hit or whatever. Instead of giving you another +1 every single level, sometimes it puts in abilities in there, or random modifiers. So that's pretty interesting, and depending on what class you are, depends on what kind of masteries you can take at certain levels. So an archer, of course, would be able to take mastery feats for ranged combat much faster than a berserker would. but a berserker might be able to take feats for melee combat much faster than an archer. Another great change in this game that I love is that instead of having class skills, your class has skill groups. And what this is skills that are very similar to each other, or that you would possibly have access to by learning one of the other skills, are all grouped together. And when you have one of these skill groups for your class, whenever you would put a rank into one skill, it would go into all of the skills in that skill group. Now, the reason they do it this way is the same reason why you would get more feats in this game. It's because this game hopes for you to be able to, essentially, like it says right here, it's a variant player's handbook, So what they want to do is allow you to pick up the monster manual as a DM and throw those against your players. And instead of having to change the monsters to fit the low magic setting, the players' characters are more heroic. They have more access to feats, more access to skills, different ways they can use feats and skills. So, in comparison to a normal D&D character, of course you're going to have way more feats and way more skill ranks, but you don't have that access to magic items or high level of spells. But continuing on, there was some changes to combat as well. Some of the main ones that I would like to point out is you have active and passive defenses. And this works a lot like, well, it still has flat-footed and touch attacks. But instead of having to remember what goes into flat-footed and what goes into touch attacks, now the defense, all little boxes down the row, some of them are considered passive defense, some of them are considered active defense. Now, your passive defense would be what you would get to touch, and your active defense would be what would normally be taken away for flat-footed. So that would be like your dodge and your dexterity bonus, stuff like that. Which your base defense bonus also goes to your active defense. So flat-footed in this game is actually a really big deal, which makes having a high initiative bonus much bigger deal. And another thing is that along with changes to skills in combat, they have these things called challenges. Now, a combat challenge would be something like you could take like a -2 to your chance to hit in order to get a +1 to damage. Or you might get a -2 to hit to get a +1 to armor class until your next turn. But there's also skill challenges. And what skill challenges do is, let's say you have a lot of ranks in your climb check and you have to climb this wall, but you don't have a lot of time to climb this wall. Instead of taking the normal time to climb a wall, you could take a skill challenge and it'll give you a negative to your roll, but if you succeed, you can actually climb the wall much faster than you normally would be able to. But those are a couple things that I like about the challenges. I think that's pretty cool and unique. You could easily implement that into your own game without needing this book, but I think it's nice to have it in the book so that if you wanted to run straight by the system, that stuff is still available to you. And not to mention, if you wanted to use that, instead of having to house rule it and explain it to your players, they have access to it themselves. 1 second. Now, magic. This is what I've been waiting to get to, is that, since this is low magic setting, magic is more rare. you're less likely to come across magic in general, whether it be items, creatures, or people using magic. But the way magic in this works, instead of having spell slots normally like you would with a wizard, you have mana points. And when the mana points are used up, you cannot cast anymore. But the thing about that is you can actually go over. Let's say you only have 2 mana points left, and what you want to cast might cost 4 mana. Now, you can do this. You can cast it for 4 mana, even though you only have 2. But what it does is you have to make a save of 2 plus 10, I believe, because you went 2 over what you have available to you. So you would have to make a save of 12. And if you don't make it, then you take a -2 to all your ability scores. So I kind of like that. This book kind of makes it harder for you to play a spellcaster, but if you really want to play a spellcaster for role-playing purposes, I believe it's so much more enriching and to the story to play this kind of spellcaster instead of just a wizard who just throws spells left and right. The way they explain mana is that it's this energy that moves between different worlds, and when it travels from one world to another, it's not exactly the same. So it becomes hard to control magic because of the use of mana and the fact that mana changes as it passes through the worlds. Now, someone who just attempts to control mana and manifest it into a spell is probably going to cause a lot of problems, because that mana is so disoriented or different than what it's supposed to be that it has a negative effect as where they were looking for a positive effect. Now, a higher level spellcaster or someone who's put more study into it can better control that mana as it travels from one world to another, so that when they finally do cast their spell, it comes out relatively close to what they expected. Now, it says in here that no spell, or nearly no spell, has the effect the caster intended. At least, not entirely. It's unlikely for a spell to do unlikely. Sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied here. It's unlikely for a spell to do exactly what the caster intends to, but that doesn't mean that it won't do mechanically what you intended it to do. It just might not be exactly the same thing. Now, another thing that I would like to point out, and I almost forgot about this in general, was that there is a thing called strain for your ability scores. Now, there are some checks that aren't used with skills, such as like breaking down a door and that would just be a strength check. Now, strength checks usually don't change with level, but strain allows it to. So it might be much harder to break through, like a concrete wall or a brick wall or something like that, than it is to break through a wooden door, of course. But does that mean that we should make it impossible for the players? No, like, you can actually strain your strength, and what this means is at the cost of 5 hit points, you get a +1 to your check for strength. So if your strength is an 18, that's only a +4. Now you take 10 hit points away and you get a +2. So now you are working with a +6 to your roll instead. But nonetheless, I feel this video has been going on for quite a while, and I had to skip 3 phone calls in the middle of it. So I'm going to go ahead and end it here. Go ahead and in the comment section below, tell me what you thought about it, and I'll see you guys later.